By the end of this video, you will once and for all understand story points. That might be the last video you watch about story points. In all my years working with Agile, with Scrum teams, I've never seen a team truly, fully understand and being comfortable with using story points. There's always some sort of confusion. You start hearing things like story points are all about complexity. How do I convert story points to mandates? How do we increase our velocity? Our velocity is the productivity of a team. Bugs, defects shouldn't be estimated. First, let's start with defining story points, which are units of measure for expressing an estimate of the overall effort required to fully implement a product backlog item or any other piece of work. Some of you might have heard that story points are all about risk, complexity, effort. Risk refers to the total amount of risk or uncertainty associated with the work we need to do. As an example, if we are dependent on a lot of teams in order to complete this piece of work, there's a lot of risk, uncertainty, especially if we had a lot of problems in the past with this team, working with this team. Complexity refers to the level of difficulty of a task. Can a true beginner do this task, or do I need to be at an advanced level in order to do this task? That's complexity. Now, risk, uncertainty, complexity, all this together, not only not only risk, not only uncertainty, all these three together help you determine the effort required in order to complete this piece of work. Stop saying that story points are all about complexity. It's wrong. We are trying to determine the effort here, and we are taking everything into consideration: risk, uncertainty, and complexity in order to determine the effort. Throughout the years, I've always used the same method to explain story points, and if it worked for me up to now, we will be using cars. What you're seeing on the screen right now, the Mini Cooper, how big is it? Tough question, right? You don't have a car in front of you. Maybe you've never seen this car. But what if I rephrase my question? Out of the three cars that you'll see on the screen right now, these three options, pick a car that is similar to the Mini Cooper. Option 1, the BMW 3 Series. 2, the Suzuki Swift. And 3rd, the Ford Raptor. A much easier question, right? Second, the Suzuki Swift is very similar in terms of size, I would say, in terms of how big is it to a Mini Cooper. Now, imagine we need to put a number next to each one of these cars. A number that doesn't mean anything. Let's say we agree together that the Mini Cooper, the small car, is the number 1. What would you assign to the BMW 3 Series? 3? 5? What would you assign to the Ford Raptor? 8? 13? It doesn't matter. But at least you will be able to assign a number based on the point of reference, the one of a Mini Cooper. We are trying to determine how does the BMW 3 Series fit in terms of the Mini Cooper. If a Mini Cooper is a 1, maybe the BMW is a 3 or a 5. And the Raptor, bigger, has to be bigger, and 8 or 13, and we are using the Fibonacci sequence in order to determine this. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, 40, 100. I could throw any car at you, and assuming that you know the model of a car, even though you don't know the dimensions, you could fit this car. You could even give this car a number compared to the others, an approximate number. That's the beauty of story points. You don't know the exact dimension of a car, but you know where it fits compared to other cars. Now tell me, was it simple? Did you understand it? Congratulations, you know more than most Agile practitioners. Yeah, about story points, you know more than most Agile practitioners with this simple example. Now we just need to take this simple example, this method, and apply it to backlog items. And estimating backlog items is very similar to estimating cars. We were using points for cars, let's call that car points. Now we'll be using story points to estimate backlog items. Remember, we don't know how long a backlog item will take. We are trying to determine the effort here in terms of risk, uncertainty, complexity, the total effort that it will take to complete this piece of work. And we didn't know the dimension of a car. We could size it, right? Same thing for backlog item. We don't know how long this backlog item will take. We just know that all the backlog items that are free will most probably take the same amount of effort in order to complete. How do you do it? Very simple. 2 easy steps. First, reference points. Take a few backlog items that you've already completed, the team has already recently completed, and assign some points, story points, to these backlog items. These will be the point of reference. Each time we'll estimate the effort in future sprints, we will be using these as reference. Same as we did for the car example. Which was the point of reference? The Mini Cooper. The Mini Cooper was a one car point. And then I told you the BMW 3 Series, how much is it compared to the Mini Cooper? You said 5. The Ford Raptor, 8 compared to the reference point. You do the same thing for a backlog item. Find one which is very easy to do, like Hello World. That's a 1-pointer. Find something which takes a little bit more effort. That's a 3-pointer, a 5-pointer, an 8-pointer. Find all reference points, which we will then use for future sprints. Step number 2, for each backlog item that you need to estimate in the sprint or future sprints, you compare these to your reference points and you insert them into a bucket of 1 point, a bucket of 3 points, 5 points, 8 points, 20 points, 40 points. Again, we don't care about how long it takes in order to do these backlog items. We are just comparing this backlog item to the other reference points that we have and inserting that into a bucket. You get everyone in the room, all the developers, and you talk together until you find a consensus. If half of the team says 3 and the other half says 8, you don't put 5 as story point. You discuss, you find out why some people believe it's 8, you find out why some people believe it's a 3, and you find common ground, a consensus. If we finally decide it's a 5, you put 5, but you don't take the average of both. That's it. It's that simple. You now know more than 99% of all Agile practitioners about story points. It's that simple. Now, how does velocity relate to all the things that we talked about in this video about story points? There's still a lot of confusion around velocity, maybe even more than story points. Velocity is simple to understand. Velocity is the total amount of effort, story points, units of measure assigned to each user stories that we completed in the sprint. At the end of a sprint, the team will calculate their velocity. Let's say we started the sprint with 10 user stories. Each one of these user stories was a 5-pointer. 5 story points assigned to each one of these user stories. At the end of the sprint, we completed 9 out of 10. That's 45 points. Our velocity is 45 points. As simple as that. I just calculated the velocity. Don't overcomplicate things. Now, people believe velocity can be used to measure efficiency, productivity, effectiveness. No. Predictive tool. We can predict the future using velocity. Let's say each and every single sprint we do 45 in terms of points. Our velocity is 45. 3 sprints in a row we did 45. There's a high chance in the next sprint we'll also do 45 points. That's the beauty of using velocity to predict future sprints. Let's say again we do 100 points. The velocity is 100 for 3 sprints in a row. We always do 100, and our backlog, there's 500 story points in our backlog. The total amount of story points, we estimated our total backlog, 500 story points. We need 5 sprints to complete our full backlog. Because we always do 100 sprints. There's a high chance in the future sprints we also do around 100. So we can estimate our backlog. We already did that, 500 story points. And we can predict how much time it will take to complete our backlog, full backlog. We can predict the future. We can predict release dates of each one of these features. That's the beauty of using velocity. So please stop using velocity to determine the productivity of a team, or especially to compare teams. Remember, when you start measuring a team or people on something, the target will become the measure. If you tell them that their productivity, their bonus will be determined by how much their velocity is at the end of a year, they will ensure they will do everything they can to increase their velocity. But the velocity can be easily faked. Instead of a 3, I would say that we use a story is a 5. No one is gaining from this. So stop comparing teams. Stop assigning efficiency, effectiveness, or productivity to velocity numbers. A better way to use velocity is following the trend, ensuring that first the team can meet what they said they would do in the sprint. If their sprint goal is X and at the end of a sprint they completed X, that's a good sprint. That's a good sprint. If they said they would complete 100 points in the sprint and at the end of the sprint they completed 100 points, that's a good sprint. If each and every single sprint they complete 200 points, but in one sprint they complete only 150, that's a thing that we need to talk about in the sprint retrospective. Obviously, don't punish the team because they did 50 less points, but we need to find out what happened. What can we improve? Something changed maybe in the team. Maybe our estimation was off. How can we improve in future sprints? And the same thing applies when velocity increases. If we do every single sprint 50 points in terms of velocity, and in the next sprint we do 100, doubling our velocity, we need to talk about that in the sprint retrospective. Maybe we're going too fast and we are neglecting quality. We're putting buggy features to production. Now, if you want to know the common mistakes people make when using story points, velocity, estimating in story points, watch this video right here and I'll see you in a few seconds.